at Temple, I was covering Division I sports at 19. I was covering Paul Palmer when he went to the Heisman Trophy. I was covering John Chaney's great teams. So it was a great background that I was doing a lot of newspaper writing. After I graduated in '89, I worked for my local paper back near Asbury Park, New Jersey, and covered high school sports. Did that for a couple of years, and then something you guys could probably relate to. My father was on my back about getting a job with benefits, so I left the paper and went to an ad agency in New York, and did that for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved learning about marketing. I loved learning about marketing communications, which I think everyone should learn, because, or at least how to identify what's coming at you. And then I got tired of it. I got tired of commuting to New York every day. I didn't see I was married. I was 30. I was married. I had a little boy. I didn't see them very often because I was commuting to New York and back. And I got tired of the advertising industry. It can be great. It also can be very tedious. And it also can be very unstable. And having a young family was not something I wanted, was instability. So I was on a shoot. I was working with Land Rover, and we were doing a shoot in Gerlach, Nevada, where the whole point of the ad is you can take these cars anywhere. So it's a shot of this Land Rover driving across the desert, driving, and then a bunch of native Alaskans come out of it. And that just, proves the point. But I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I just made a list in my head of what I wanted to do when I grew up. The top of the list was writing for NFL Films. And so I got busy. I'm like, all right, if, all these studs from Syracuse have their applications in, surely if I'm on a pile with those guys, I lose. I'm going to die on that pile. So how do I get what I want? So I spent about 3 weeks researching NFL Films. I got some poor PR person on the phone and kept her on the phone for like 2.5 hours until she had told me everything she could possibly tell me about the company. And they don't hire writers, they hire producers. Okay, how am I going to position myself? I haven't cut anything since a Super 8 project freshman year at Temple. How am I going to do this? And then I began positioning. If you guys think about any product, it's positioned. You think about, let's say light beer positioned as, great taste, great, less filling, right? How do I position myself against, Derek from Syracuse, who, went to a better school and probably has all the accolades and might know somebody? And so I just decided to position myself as a producer using every ounce of experience in my life that I possibly had. So I wrote a 10-page letter to Steve Sable, who at the time was president of NFL Films. And I wrote about my experience, my passion, growing up watching NFL Films, growing up as a football person, being the worst player in the history of New Jersey, but learning very quickly I have a better chance to advance in the game as a writer than I ever did as a player. And he bought it. Sent me a postcard 3 days later. You're our boy. Don't go anywhere. Don't do anything. I sent it in September. I met with Bob Ryan, who at the time was the vice president in charge of production. A week later, he said, call me after the season. Called him on Valentine's Day, went in like the next day for an interview. Got a job that day, and I've been there. This is my 29th season.
That's a heck of a story, isn't it?
That's
a heck of a story.
But no, I don't know if that would work today because some stupid bot would flag me, but I think that, you got to do something different. I think all of us have challenges when it comes to being compared with somebody else, especially where you want to get in this business. And I was lucky I had a nice foundation of not only writing about sports, but working outside of sports. And that's why, I get really nervous when people concentrate solely on sports, because there's a whole world out there. And going outside of sports and working in the automotive business, working with liquor brands, working with cough syrup, all these different things that I worked on in advertising taught me a lot of things about a lot of things, also taught me how to work with people who are radically different than me. And all that came together when I came to films, and I was able to take all of that life experience and build a nice little career out of it.
You actually wrote a 10-page paper, or a 10-page letter.
It was actually 9.
And did he read it? He must have
read it. He must have read it because he really liked it.
I'm not recommending a 9-page letter. Why?
Why not? Listen, it doesn't have to be a 9-page letter, but as long as you're going outside the box, you give it everything you got. I mean, I read cover letters, and we do read cover letters. Everyone reads cover letters that are generated by AI, and you can spot them a mile away, and it just shows no imagination and no originality and no forethought. It's just plugging in answers to a computer. I'm not into that. I believe, listen, if you're going to go after anything, whether it be a job or your passions in life or building a family, you have to go all out. And I went all out. And thankfully he read it. I don't know if he read the whole thing. He told me he did. But I certainly circumvented whatever list they had and put myself at the top of it.
You had to have grabbed his attention somehow in the beginning that made him say, okay, I'm going to read the rest of this.
I guess the first paragraph was basically, who am I and what do I want? And I said, cutting to the chase, I'm asking for a job. This is who I am. This is what I can do. And I believe I can be the next great producer there. And then he read everything else. And, he was very enthusiastic. You had a question?
Yeah, I was about to ask you, what was your hook like to catch it?
I think, and I haven't read it in many years, I said something like the greatness of NFL films comes from passion, and my passion was unrivaled. I think that's how I did it. And I mentioned that, I think at the end of the letter, I said, listen, my applying here might not make any sense. You hiring me might make less sense, but give me a chance to talk to you and we'll see why this makes perfect sense. And just sort of strung it along that way, saying, listen, I know this is ridiculous. I'm leaving a pretty nice career here, and I took a sizable pay cut to go to films, which my wife didn't love, but she understood that this is what I wanted to do. So, you take chances. Now, if I had stayed in the business in advertising, I would have lasted maybe a year or two more, and I would have found something else. But I think when you pour your heart out, and when you are genuine like that, I think people will appreciate it. I mean, we're all dying for a connection out there. I think people, especially with so many screens, if you could put yourself, your personal self out there and back it up with the goods, I think you can't go, you are helping yourself and not hurting yourself. I'm not saying I wasn't begging for his pity. I was just stating what I could do and what my passion was. And I invited him to talk to me.
It's a great story. So, you learned a little bit about Todd right now, so we'll open it up. They've got plenty of questions for you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious before we start, just so Todd gets an idea, how many of you are interested in production? Yeah, large number. Pretty good number.
Those of you who aren't interested in production, what are you interested in? What?
I'm interested in social media.
Really? Okay. Anyone else?
Writing.
Outstanding. Yes.
Broadcasting.
Okay. Well, that's production in its own way.
Yeah.
Broadcasting is a very different type of production than film production. I do a little bit of both. So there is a lot of production there. And believe me, if you've ever been on site at a game and see how those trucks work, that's a major, major production. So don't sell it short. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Directing.
Wow. Well, that's production.
Well, yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
if there are
it's
difference.
listen. Production is teamwork,
Yeah.
and a director has to be the point guard. The director has to be the person conveying what's going on and distributing the information. And directors can have the most brilliant vision in the world, but unless they're sharing that vision with everyone else and communicating clearly what they want, how they're going to do it, and then listening to everyone there. I mean, I've directed dozens. I directed OJ. I directed, I've directed dozens and dozens and dozens of productions, and I'm absolutely useless unless I have a full group behind me that can carry out what I have in mind and work with me and communicate to me the challenges we're facing. So yeah, if you're directing, whether it's for the screen or for TV, you are part of you are the spearhead.
All right, let's do questions. Go ahead.
You have a question?
So you said that you wrote the long letters
Yep.
that you'd stand out and like have something unique about yourself. What would you say today going forward, trying to get a job? What is something unique that you think not a lot of people do anymore?
Well, job search now is so different because the competition is so much fiercer. 1997, when I wrote that letter, I dropped it in the mail. It took me 3 weeks to finish it and make it perfect. Now, people are pressing buttons. And some people, if they get a flurry of what they're doing, are pressing 10 buttons a day, applying to 10 jobs a day. When I kind of reworked the internship program in NFL Films, we were getting maybe 150, 175 people for our 10, 12 spots. Now we're getting 1,200. So the competition is greater. It's two things, I think. One, consistent excellence. Doing great work, and it doesn't matter if some of it's in production and some of it's flipping pizzas and some of it's changing diapers and looking after kids. Whatever it is, a trail of consistent excellence that will prove your record that when people are hiring you, they are hiring someone who's going to do a great job. The second thing you can do to stand out is use your own words and use your own passion. I'm so tired of looking at MIC letters, and I'm so tired of looking at resumes that don't convey to me maybe why they're special, why them. I think great work, there's no substitute for it. But also, as you're preparing your material, understand that we will look at the resume and cover letter, not to, we'll read what you have to say, but we're also going to see how you approach your work. I had a coach once who would yell, the way you practice is the way you play, same thing. The way you approach work is the way you approach work. And if you're looking for someone to hire you to work with them, you want to show in everything you approach excellence all the way through. That's how you stand out, and that's how you draw attention to yourself.
So you mentioned internship. You were involved in, and I put this in your bio there, that you were involved in kind of reinventing the internship program at NFL Films. Kara Rogers, who was a graduate of this program, she also was involved for many years with the internship program.
Yes.
So how do you go through, you mentioned 1,200, she's told me even more in the summer, but how do you go through all those resumes?
It's a good question. I have not been a part of the intern program for some time. I do work with hiring producers. First of all, we're joined with HR at the league. There's no getting around it. 20 years ago, I could do whatever I wanted, run it any way I saw fit. HR has gotten involved, which means that it is a corporate. They do look for corporate-like things, and I don't know if they use bots anymore. I know they did for a while. I think they stopped. But the first thing they do is they look for the qualifications. Is this person in the field? Is this person studying in the field? They look at the position. We get a lot of letters from people who want to be on camera. I'll get to your question in 1 sec. Oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering how many hours do you put in?
Way too many. I work about 50, 55 hours a week during the season. But I'll get back to that in a second, but I want to talk a little more about the process. We look for people who want to be in production. We get a lot of people who want to be in front of the camera. It's not kind of what we do. And if somebody wants to be talent and they come to NFL Films, they're in the wrong place. We want people who are in the right place. The second thing we do is we look at what part of it. Any audio people here? You get a couple audio people? All right. If somebody works in audio, I'm not going to put them with legal clearance. I'm going to put you with audio. I'm going to have you learn what you want to learn. If someone wants to work in a studio, that's where I'm going to put you. So we stopped kind of creating a rotational program where you get a little bit of this and a little bit of that and made it more of an immersive program. So we're looking for people who want careers in the areas we're putting them in. But I always look for two things. Can this person think, and can this person benefit from this and exist and do well in this environment? Those are two really important things. I always look for peripheral vision. You're not going to, what comes next, being able to see one step ahead. That's not going to happen in the first month, 2 months. But if you're in a season-long internship, it starts to click. I'm looking for someone who begins to think outside the box, who can take things off of my plate. Also, does this person know how to work? Can this person exist in this environment? Can this person handle the workload that we're doing? Is this person going to ask the right question? The internships, it's a reciprocal thing. We want the interns to get as much out of us as humanly possible, and we want to get as much out of them as humanly possible. The work, it's not theory. We're not going to have you do theoretical things. We want We want you to learn, and you learn by doing. So, when you get into the interview stage, first I think they do a higher view interview.
They do.
Yeah. Has anyone done one of those things? You've done higher view? Can you describe how awful it is?
It sucks.
Yeah. So higher view, basically, you're talking into your laptop. They'll write down a couple questions, and you will give 2-minute answers into the laptop. When you're doing that, just be yourself. Just be yourself. You're going to have to do it in the next couple of years anyway. Just be yourself. Don't give, they're looking for this. Just tell your truth. Be honest. If you make a mistake, wait, I didn't mean to say that. It's okay to be human.
By the way, higher view is you're just answering to a screen.
Yes.
And it's recorded, and then the next interview, if you get to the next stage,
Is with
that's
people.
with people. But that's how they kind of start to put you on their radar, and that's how they start. So if you get a higher view, if you get one of the higher view interviews, you're on their radar. That's a great thing. And then you want to get to the next stage, and that's how they kind of start weeding people out.
When we look at the higher views, we're looking for background. We're looking for, can this person put 2 sentences together? How do they present themselves? How do they prepare?
Mhm.
How do they dress for the occasion? All right. Question. Yes, you. How long did you spend for your last final that you took? Yeah, how long did you study for your last final?
Well, I would say probably 7 days. I mean, I prep like a week in advance. I try to plan out my week.
Good answer. That's 1 exam, 1 class, 1 semester of college. This is the first job of the rest of your life. If you're not spending the amount of prep time you would for an exam or a term paper, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, you're talking about preparation. What is there to prepare? Not just the answers, but are you researching the company? And I mean knowing everything they do. People are hiring people because they have a problem they need solved by a human being. Okay, what's the problem? How do I use it? How do I position myself as the best answer to that problem? How do I get the information I need? Now, this place has a lot of people. Let's use films as an example. This place has a lot of Rowan people in NFL films. Alumni Network is good. Reach out. Use LinkedIn. Reach out to people. Hey, look, I'm up for a job there. Can we talk? Can I buy a slice of pizza? Can we, talk over coffee? Anything you can to find out what they're looking for, who the hiring manager is, what shows, and then do your work. Research. Leave no stone unturned so you can talk about everything they do. It shows us how hard you work before you even have the job. And again, you talk about differentiating yourself. That's how you differentiate yourself, by being more prepared. Look, somebody's going to come from a better pedigree school, whatever the hell that means, and someone's going to know somebody. Someone's going to be somebody's brother-in-law's dog walker's cousin's buddy. It doesn't matter if you out-prepare them and outwork them. You will. Believe me, you will shine. We will notice.
And I don't buy this better school thing.
No,
I don't buy it. I'm not saying no. I mean, the general public sees it that way. I'm telling you right now, we're littered with people of Rowan at NFL
Absolutely.
Films. One of the top production places anywhere in sports, if not the top.
Lots of Rowan
and
people
we're
there.
lots of Rowan people. And one of our students is working out directly with Jason Weber, who he knows, senior producer, Rowan grad, been there as long as Todd, been there a long time, and he's working one-on-one with him, doing a project now. So, you could go to pick any school, you're paying $80,000 a year, so what? You're in a school and a program right now. We have a great reputation. We have tons of people in the business, and you can get just as far as any of those people that go to those $80,000 a year schools.
If
you're smarter.
If you're willing to work. If you're willing to work. If you're not willing to work, if you're not willing to do great work when you have the opportunity here, because great work will shine. There's no doubt about that. If you're making good documentaries and you're doing things that are well thought out and well written, and you're working with good people and making good production, that will show. If you are preparing yourself for the interviews, if you're doing the work here, that will show. If you're not, you're like anyone else.
Yeah.
And we get people. There are people who think that if you go to a certain school, you're born with a better brand of underwear, and that's, as you said, nonsense. I think It's a matter of how hard you work. You have great opportunity. They have so many sports here, if you're into sports, so many things going on in this university in the Philadelphia area that you can communicate about, that you can write about, that you can do social media about. There's so many things that you can hone your craft about now. Internships are essential. Work on campus, I'm seeing, is more and more essential. And even if it's, look, I had to work 2 jobs, right? I drove a school bus and I worked at a newspaper. I was just as proud of both. And I could tell you, both of them led me to where I am now when I was in college and high school. It doesn't matter if as long as you have a history of consistent excellence and can talk about that clearly and can identify what areas of consistent excellence identify with the job that's there. That puts you in the running against anybody. To answer your question, it's about 55 hours a week, but I'm into it. I think if I wanted to slack off, I could. It depends what projects I'm on. There's no missed deadlines. I mean, if something has to be done at a certain time in a certain place, I have to deliver, or my team has to deliver. So it's making sure I'm prepared. For example, yesterday we had to do what's called a world feed, where the NFL broadcasts games and then we kind of take it up in the cloud, reconfigure it with this app, and spit it back out to the world as part of a world feed. I was doing the London game yesterday. I had to be in the office at 5 o'clock.
In the morning.
Yeah, that's life. That's enough fun, but the game started at 9. What can I tell you? So, that's what you do, what you have to do. Any other questions?
Oh yeah, there's tons. All right, who's got next?
Yes.
Christine.
Hi.
Hi, how do you come up with original story ideas for short projects or short films you want to do?
The most greatest thing you can do is live your life. When you live your life, things happen to you. When they happen to you, you can tell stories of that related to anything. I recently was asked to do a 50th anniversary kind of thing about the Superdome in New Orleans. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do? We've told Superdome stories, we've done Katrina, we've done all these things. And I started thinking, what do I have to say? And then I thought, well, it's not what I have to say, it's what the Dome would say. Well, who's the Dome? And I started thinking about New Orleans and all the people I've met down there. And then I thought about this woman I met one time down there who was working in a restaurant, and she didn't look very healthy, but she was the happiest, most cheerful, friendly person I ever met, and it looked like life beat her pretty good, but she was singing. And I thought maybe that's the Dome. So I told the story from the Dome's point of view of everything the Dome's seen in the last 50 years in the voice of a 50-year-old African-American woman. And it's on YouTube. You could probably find it. I did it a couple weeks ago for NFL Films Presents. But you meet people, you see things, you live your life, you have your experience. And then when something happens, you can tie those things into what you've seen and what you know. And your point of view, whoever you are, is important and valuable because no one has your frame of reference. Perspective is such an important thing when you're telling stories. Because if you can tell a story in a way no one else is doing it and can tell it in a unique fashion, you have something. And the world is filled with button pushers. To be a true storyteller takes imagination, and it takes time, and it takes looking at things a little bit differently sometimes. But I think, I came up with a story recently about a player. Well, here, I did one. When I was a little kid, the only way you got to know football players is football cards, right? And so I had a football card of this player who played for Washington named Jerry Schmidt. And for some reason, I had his football card every year. And I thought, okay, I know this guy. I would watch the games on TV. I know him. I have his football card. Then I got to college, and he died of HIV. First NFL player to die of HIV. And then I thought, I guess I don't know who this guy is. Now, in the mid-'80s, HIV was a panic. It was a scare, and there were a lot of people who were making good money scaring the crap out of people, dividing them. I don't know if that happens today or not. But anyway, I decided at that moment, someday I want to tell that story. So I got to NFL Films. It was one of the first things I pitched, and they said no. 5 years go by, I pitch it again. They said no. 10 years goes by, I pitch it again. No. Finally, I knew we were interviewing a couple of his old teammates from Washington, so I begged somebody, just ask a couple questions about this, see what we get. And the result was overwhelming. He was an amazing teammate. He was an amazing guy. His teammates loved him. After that, they said, okay, go. And it took 6 months of my life to make this film about 10 years ago. And I'm so proud of it. Just we were able to tell the story of someone in the 60s and 70s living a double life out of fear. And something today, you know, everyone kind of is who they are, and that's great, but it wasn't always the case. So I was proud to tell that story, and that story came from my childhood. So I think, you know, we all carry stories with us, right? We all see stuff every day, and it's just finding ways and unique ways of telling it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, so like kind of when you were in the advertising agency, you felt like you weren't doing what you wanted to do, when you're like kind of exhausting every aspect of your life and you're not getting to the place that you want to get, how were you able to mentally get yourself out of that to keep pushing to find something that you actually wanted to do?
I did a lot of reading. I knew that I had to work on some things, so I got some books. The first book, actually, I shared an office with a young woman whose father was named Harvey McKay. He was a big salesman out of Minnesota, and he wrote a series of business books. So one of these books was on my desk one day, and I started reading it. It was really, really good, and it gave me a lot of ideas. And then I read 7 Habits by Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I'm sure the library here at Rowan has it, any library in America has it. And that just talks about principles and living by principles. And then I read another book by another person who talked about finding your passion and how your passion fuels. And so between those books and many others I read, I began to figure out, first of all, that I didn't have to say no to myself. You know, you surround yourself with people who say, oh, geez, you know, why would they take you? You know, you went to Temple, you didn't go to Princeton. Well, you know, why would they take you? And then you surround yourself with people who say, why not you? I married someone who said, yeah, of course you could do that. Why can't you? I got lucky. So I think a lot of that goes into it, and believing, first of all, believing in yourself. You know, we all get kicked around in life, and we all get people who put you down to make themselves look better. If you start listening to yourself and what you want and what you can do, and you drive your passion, all of a sudden you're not working, you're just having a great time fulfilling your dreams. So it took me until I was 30 to figure that out. You know, I didn't have that when I walked out of school. It took me a long time to decide what I wanted, and at least have the, you know, guts to try it. And I could have failed, and that's fine. I didn't. I got lucky. It worked out. But then I got there and I really went to work. And I spent every day as a challenge. I did something today that I found very challenging. I always want to do the best work humanly possible, because that's the only way I can guarantee that I'll stay there as long as I want. The competition is fierce. There are tons of bright, talented people like yourselves who would love nothing more than to take my job. And the only way I'm going to keep my job is by outworking you. Yes.
So you talked about how you pitched your idea for a story for many, many years and it kept getting shut down. How do they decide which stories are worth getting
Depends
forward?
Depends on the show. Let's use A Football Life, which is NFL Network. It's an hour documentary. The programming people will say, we want Hall of Famers. We want people who will drive ratings. If you look at NFL Films Presents, well, that's a show that's just looking for a wide variety of stories. You could have a story about a current player, a former player, and you could have an essay about somebody. So for NFL Films Presents, they get together once a year, off-site, with all the ideas that have been submitted year-round. They bat it around, and eventually the show head and a couple other people pick the ones they want. I've had ideas where I've thrown out and they've said yes within 30 seconds. And I've had ideas that I thought were the greatest ideas in the world, and no dice. In some cases, you keep fighting. But every show at NFL Films has a show head, has somebody who's running the show, and that person has to decide what to do. And budget enters up to it also. If I'm doing a show about football in Hawaii, well, that's a little expensive to fly my butt and my whole crew out there. If I'm doing something about, you know, something here at Rowan, a little cheaper. So budget enters into it. scope of the show, and if it's a good story or not. It might be a good story to 3 or 4 of us who are sitting there having lunch and over our sandwiches we're laughing at it, and then you go and talk to everyone else and it's not such a good idea. So, you know, you try. And again, the first time I did it, there were people like, we're never doing that. In fact, I was in the middle of production on it. I was at a banquet for Washington alumni players, and an old league office guy was there asking me what I was doing there, just casually. And I said, well, doing a thing on Jerry. He goes, you know, there are plenty of normal guys too played in the NFL. And I kind of looked at him like, dude, somebody's going to come out of the closet eventually, and we have to tell them that the hell's not going to freeze over when it happens. So I fought an uphill battle, and when the time is right, I was able to do the piece I wanted.
Let me bring up. So you mentioned storytelling. Oh, and you could do one of your own. Jason Weber is actually doing one here on Rowan on OJ.
Yeah.
So you were with OJ.
I was
in
with
Detroit.
OJ at the draft. Yeah, and that was really fun. It's funny. We were just talking about it. He got to, he got to pick the Eagles draft pick, and it was someone he wanted on the team. So it was kind of funny being back there with him. And then, I remember there were trades. The Eagles made about 500,000 trades, and like they had him waiting. And my job was to make sure my cameras captured him walking on the stage, walking off the stage. I had to do my job, but it was really fun. And you were wearing a mic. But yeah, again, football stories are football stories. Sometimes football stories are life stories. A couple of years ago, a former player who I worked with came up to me and said, I'm a World War II expert. And I always take, this guy played for 15 years. He was a good but not great player, had a nice career. He said, well, I take these World War II veterans back to the field of battle every year. I said, that sounds really cool. He goes, yeah, next year's the 75th anniversary of Normandy. I said, I want to come with you. So again, they said no. I tried again. They said, finally, after begging and pleading, literally standing on my friend's desk, they gave me the budget to go to France and shoot this. And it was a good story. It was great. We made a 20-minute documentary out of it. It was pretty awesome. So I'll get to you in a second. In the back.
For me, what's your favorite NFL films you did for the coaches and stuff? Or what's your favorite thing you produced for Football Life?
Football Life, it's funny. We did Football Life. We did Paul Brown. That was kind of fun. I do a lot of Greatest Games films for ESPN. I love those because it's football. The thing I just did on New Orleans was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that one was good. And then, did you do the college football one or no? Did they give it Saturday?
No, I did not. That other people. And that's a great thing, is that so many people do so many different types of projects, and there are projects that don't interest me at all, but are good pieces that someone else will jump at. That's the thing. You get 70 producers, very, very different people from all walks of life, all ages, all creeds. You're going to get a wide variety of stories. I like to tell stories about people. I had a wonderful story once where, this might be my favorite, where I got a phone call from some guy who played for the Vikings in the 70s. And he said, we bought a gold mine in the 70s, and it sat for 20 years because typical Vikings of the 70s luck, they went to the Super Bowl every year and lost. It would have cost more money to get the gold than the gold would have been worth. So the gold mine sat. And then some outfit came with a 1,000-foot diamond-crusted drill and hit a vein of gold. So now Joe Kapp and Jim Marshall and all these guys from the Vikings. Wow. So I'm going to Murray, Idaho, and I'm taking mining safety classes, and we're shooting the detonation of a mine with dynamite. That was, I think, my favorite.
That's pretty cool right there. That's a cool story.
What's your favorite style of films for these?
Well, I like circles. I like starting at a point, coming all the way around back to the point. That's me. I like first person. I like narrative. I like stories about people. But I like starting here and then coming all the way around, and the end starts with the beginning. That's kind of the way I like to do it. But you do it something different every single time. That's the joy of it. They're all different. They're all different stories, so you're taking different approaches to it. And you're editing it differently. And a producer at NFL Film does his own editing, does his own writing, produces, directs, all of that stuff. So, you know, you're challenged by the different stories to make it different every time. You had a question.
Yeah, I was about to say, did you ever do a film on the two Bills, Bill Parcells and Bill?
I didn't do that one. My good friend Ken Rogers did.
Okay.
And that was that was a 30 for 30. I've helped out on a couple 30 for 30s, directing and doing bit parts, but I've never helmed a 30 for 30. Those are kind of intense. I had an idea for a 30 for 30, but they did not like it. And it's part of the territory. But those are special because you do have the budget and the time to really blow out a story. I worked on the Jets New York Sack Exchange film, and that was really fun. I got to spend some time with Joe Klecko at the Hall of Fame, and those things are really detailed and well done. But you're also dealing with an outside client. You're dealing with ESPN, and they have their own agenda. So while I want to make the film I want to make, they're paying for it. So it's a little bit of a compromise. They might want it a certain style. Sir?
What is the biggest change you've noticed that NFL films over the course of 30 years that you think it's positively or negatively affecting your job?
Wow. Well, I think the biggest change, 29 years ago, it was a visual dominated company. It was the shot. It was the slow motion ball in flight. The more sound, we did maybe one wire every other week, and we did 1 or 2 sound games a week. It was not sound driven. Now it is completely sound driven. We do so many follow docs. The shots are lost because people's span of attention is so small these days. So no one wants to see a 90-second shot. Saquon Barkley running through the snow against the Rams last year. Anyone see that shot? Yes, greatest shot I ever saw. It was a minute from stem to stern. You don't see that anymore. You don't see a shot on the screen for a minute coming at you. It has to be a really special situation like that. So I think that's the biggest change. I don't think it's a positive or a negative. I just think it is. I think you have to adapt. And the types of things I did 25 years ago, I don't do now because you have to adapt. That's life. Things evolve. You either evolve with them or you're out of work.
Let's go to Sam over here. Go ahead, Sam.
Have you ever worked with Omaha Productions?
Sure, of course.
Sam works for Omaha.
Really? Outstanding. Yes. You know, we did a show with them. I think it was called With the Next Pick, I think it was called. And I found myself in Thibodaux, Louisiana at Manning Passing Academy. And that was an interesting shoot. Yeah, we do a lot of stuff with them, and it was a pleasure working with them. They're good people.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Sir?
As a leader, how are you able to keep the crew energized, focused, and keep them in like a good space to shoot good content?
2 things. It drives from my own energy, and it's also communication. I make sure everyone knows what they need to know, and I over-communicate. I make sure that before the shoot we talk about problems, challenges, and I let them know I'm there to help knock down obstacles. But most importantly, I keep a loose set.
Yeah.
I believe that creativity does not come out of the barrel of a gun. I think creativity comes from being relaxed, from having an open mind, and from, feeling confident. So I do everything in my power to, I crack jokes. I don't know if they're funny or not, but they keep people loose. I try and I'm not punitive unless I have to be. I tell people what I want. I expect them to do what I ask them to do in the most creative ways possible. And if there's a problem, we'll talk about it later. I'm not going to dress anybody down. But I think communication is such a huge part of it, and then the tone you set with the crew. When they see my name, and our crew members, I've worked with them over and over and over. In a situation you guys are in, sometimes you're directing and you might know everyone's job more than they do. Thankfully, I don't have that problem. I'm dealing with people who've been running audio or running a camera or doing their job for 25 years. So I let them do their jobs. I let them use their creativity, and I just tell them what I want, and I get the hell out of the way. Sir?
So I love NFL films.
Great, so do I.
My favorite one is the Barefoot Kicker episode.
Oh my God, sure.
And I want to know.
It's an oldie.
Yeah, exactly. When you have a sillier project like that versus a more serious project like other films and stuff like that, how do you keep that same mentality of this has to be really good while also keeping the lighthearted nature?
I think it's the same principles. If it's an emotional piece, does it move me? If it's a funny piece, do I laugh at it? You know, funny. As a producer, I don't inject funny. I bring out funny. I find what elements are funny and bring them out. So in that piece, you know, you have guys talking about, you know, what was the line? There was one guy being interviewed and talking about the barefoot kicker, and he was like Quasimodo, and they
Stop it right.
Yeah.
So swollen. Yeah.
yes. You know, you use what's funny. You use what's entertaining. I think it's the same attention to detail, whether you're dealing with funny or serious. I think if you're dealing with a funny piece, I did a piece a couple of years ago about how to pronounce jaguar. No one does it the same way. And we turned it into a Planet Earth spoof where we had a Richard Attenborough clone talking, how do you pronounce his name? You know, and because some people from the South, it's Jaguar, or some people it's Jaguar. The Brits call it Jaguar. So we had, but if you're doing that, you just use the best material and you have fun with it. Yes.
How do you see like AI or new media tools like influencing sports storytelling or like documentary?
Well, it's already happening. During last basketball season, I was reading a blurb about my college basketball team and the game they played. It was about 3 paragraphs, and it was a job a junior writer used to be able to do, and it was done by AI. And that used to be someone's job. You know, you do it with teams on the road, and you're not traveling them. You write a blurb. So I think what's happening is a lot of the lower end jobs, which are great training grounds, are being swapped up by or gobbled up by AI. But I think, and this is maybe naive of me, I don't believe any computer on the land can do what I can do. I just don't. I might be wrong, but I refuse to believe it. I think it's going to happen. I think, you know, you have WSC, an Israeli company, which does editing based on algorithms, based on crowd surge, and they do a nice job. You know, you have a lot of people trying to do it, obviously shaving dollars when you can because that's what you want to do. I don't believe there's any substitute for ingenuity and creativity and passion. I just don't. It's gonna continue being used, but I don't think we're ever gonna be obsolete. Who hasn't? You, sir, Red.
Is there any projects that you like were working on or worked on that you finished and they got canceled for some reason or never ended up airing?
Happens all the time. I did a piece on hunting, the Coffin Corner, and it just didn't work out. It just, I was supposed to do a show for a network, and then the funding dried up. Yeah, and it's frustrating as hell because you prepare and you get ready, and then it goes away. And I worked on shows when the NFL Network launched. I worked on lots of shows that, well, let's try this, see if it works. No, didn't work. Let's try something else. And you can't take that personally. That's just life. I've done hundreds and hundreds of pieces, and there have been a few failures, absolutely, but they don't define me. You know, you do something that didn't work, great. Let's not do that again. Let's work on something else that's really good. You might work on something that for whatever reason doesn't work or isn't successful. I've done good things that people just didn't watch. That happens too, and you just have to stick to what you do and stick to your process and your discipline and keep making good stuff. Yes, sir.
Have you ever had a favorite that you worked on and then you put progress into it and it gets canceled? Like, how does that affect you? Just like something that's like whatever you work on next?
Yeah. Yeah, there have been things I've done and was responsible for that were cut, that were canceled, and you have 2 choices when that happens. You can either let it stop you or you cannot let it stop you. I have no interest in retiring at my next failure. My next failure will happen. I can't tell you when. I can only tell you I will have one. And you just keep chugging. You learn from it. If it's my own incompetence that led to the failure, that's one thing. If it's making something and people just don't like it, and we've all been in that position, well, that's the field we're in. It's a subject. I'm not a mathematician. There is no set answer. So I think that in my mind, I had one really nasty setback a few years ago, and it shook my confidence a little bit. But I basically said, I have to own this. I have to say, this is on me, and move forward. If anyone wants to talk about, my door's open. Otherwise, we're going to consider it over, and I just move on. And this is best. You do the best you can. Does that answer your question? Anybody else? Anyone I haven't called on?
Right here.
Yes.
How do you just revamp yourself and constantly renew you and your abilities?
Fear. I don't want to be unemployed. It's real simple. You adapt or you die. Anyone here ever read a book called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a very short book about business, and it talks about the need to adapt. You know, the need to see what's going on and make yourself relevant and make yourself important, not important, but needed. I never want to be obsolete. I mean, people could look at someone who's 58 years old and say, oh, you're a dinosaur. Or I could say, shit, I just know a lot of things and I can do a lot of things. And I'm not afraid to go back and do it over again. I'm not afraid to learn something I've never done before. And I'm not haughty enough to think that I'm infallible. So the way you have a long career and the way you survive is just by working your ass off every single opportunity you have and not being overconfident and being humble enough to say, there are people out there who are smarter than me and maybe better than I am, that I just have to flat out outwork if I'm going to stay here. Is that? Yes, you again.
So how do you keep yourself from getting burned out?
It's a good question also. I have been burned out. I have been. The great thing about working at NFL Films is you have the season and the off season, and both have completely different rhythms. The season, if it's Tuesday, you do this. If it's Wednesday, you do this. And it's very structured and it's very formal. The off season, more long range stuff, less day-to-day pressure, and it allows you to catch up a little bit. And just when you get sick of one, the other one starts. That helps. But also, I walk with my wife as much as I can. I have hobbies. I have friends. I do a lot of work with, part of my job is being the liaison between NFL Films and the football operations community. I work with a lot of former players, and I do a lot of communication designed to former players in transition. And what they talk about, when you talk about someone who leaves the game at 25, 26 and has to figure out what they're doing with the next 60 years of their lives, identity comes into play. Any gymnasts here? Do we have any gymnasts? The only athlete who has a more cemented image of themselves within their sport than football players are gymnasts. Who am I if I'm not? Who am I if I don't work at NFL Films? I can give you a laundry list. And it's important to have that laundry list and to have knowing who you are and that your career does not define you. I think I'm really good at what I do and I've had great success, but you know, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a volunteer, I'm lots of things. And if that went away for some reason, I'll figure something else out. I think that's how you prevent burnout, is by keeping yourself as balanced and as grounded as you can.
Keegan, you had a question?
I did,
Right
yes.
here.
Yes, sir.
So going back to that question of new media,
Yes.
this past year, I believe it was last year or it might have been 2 years ago, but former NFL Fan of the Year, Tom Grossi, actually, he's got a history degree on top of his responsibilities as an influencer. And the NFL Films partnered with him to do a piece on the Lambeau Leap. And I was just wondering what the thought process was behind that and if we can expect more content like that in the future.
I don't know that piece specifically, so I don't know enough to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say is the league and their marketing team have done an unbelievable job working with influencers and working with social media. I helped do a brand summit for players who want to build their brands through social media. So the league is very attached to it and they encourage it. And I think anyone who's reaching anyone, we want to collaborate with. Anyone who's passionate about football, we want to collaborate with. And it doesn't matter they're telling stories to a screen size of your phone, and it doesn't matter that it's not the media that I grew up in. Look, you guys all consume media radically differently than we did growing up. And I can either ignore it or I could say, okay, I got to learn about this stuff. So in talking with Mr. Beast and talking with other influencers about what they do, it's fascinating. And these people are serious and they're intelligent, and I have a lot to learn from them.
Let's take one final question. Who hasn't asked a question, like to ask a question? Anyone here? Anyone? Right there in the back. Go ahead.
Hi. do or don't have a lot of experience? Well, let's say you're 21 years old. You have 21 years of doing experience doing something, of telling the truth, of being on time, of being easy to work with. Maybe you've had other jobs. Maybe you've changed diapers. Maybe you've flipped pizzas. Maybe you've mowed lawns. What made you excellent? What track record of consistent excellence can you show me that would extend to something else? What classwork are you doing? What project in school are you doing? I once had someone sit across from me with a very, very thin resume. I think he was from Rowan, actually. And he had a very thin resume, and I looked at him, I said, there's not a lot here. He goes, well, you don't want to hear what the jobs I've had. I said, try me. He goes, well, I worked at a golf course, and I was mowing lawns, and then I became the assistant greenskeeper, and then they moved me inside, and I was a bar back, and then I became the bartender, and now I'm sort of the dean of all the bar staff. And I said, you're telling me you got promoted every summer for 4 years, and I don't want to know about that? Of course I do. Look inward. What's excellent? What track record of consistent excellence do you possess that you can leverage onto this opportunity? Then I would say get as much experience as you could. Anything else? All right, it's been a pleasure.